I just want to be happy. A short sentence that seems harmless is the noose that strangles many people. It opens the door to a paradox that this book exposes. The more we try to hold on to happiness, the more it slips away. Maybe you used to think that happiness is a normal human state, that if you don't feel happy, it means there is something wrong in your mind or life, that you must at all costs get rid of anxiety, sadness, and disappointment to live a proper life. And that with enough practice, we can control our thoughts and emotions like a switch. But the harsh truth that the author points out is that these 4 beliefs are traps. This book, The Happiness Trap, does not comfort you with sweet words, nor does it teach you tricks to think positively. It tells the story of a society with material wealth but unprecedented spiritual crisis. Where antidepressants sell better than candy. A place where people smile in pictures but die alone. And it shows you that happiness is not a feeling that has to be maintained constantly, but a way of living true to your values. Take a look around and see what you see. Smiling faces on the street, sparkling images on the internet, stories that seem filled with joy, and then you come home to face yourself in the mirror with anxiety, fatigue, and loneliness that no one knows about. The question then was not why I was unhappy but why I believed I had to be happy all the time. Is it this false belief that is turning life into a hopeless chase? The author chose a completely different approach instead of trying to change the content in his mind. Change your relationship with it when a thought arises. I am useless, I am a failure. You don't need to argue, nor do you need to suppress. You just see it for what it is, a string of words, an echo in the brain. Nothing more. Same with emotions. Instead of suffocating the sadness, you make room for it to stay, breathe with it so it comes and goes like a guest. And then when you stop running away, you can come back to the core question. How do I want to live? It's not how I want to feel, it's what kind of person I want to be in every little action every day. That is the core of the evil method, acceptance and commitment therapy, that this book opens. A journey not to eliminate suffering but to give you the courage to live up to your values, despite the ups and downs of emotions. So I want to ask you, the person listening to these lines, have you ever realized you are stuck in the happiness trap? Are you wasting your life chasing the feeling of always being happy while the things you truly value are being neglected? If that question makes you feel a pang in your heart, then this book is the mirror you need to look into. Not to see a fake smile but to see both the darkness and the light. Then courageously move forward with them all as they are. Before going into the book review, we encourage listeners to buy and read it to fully experience the book's content. Because only when you read this book will you understand the issues I am talking about. Please buy the book and support the author. Now let's start reviewing this book with me. Suppose everything you believe about happiness is wrong. Suppose it is because of your belief that you are increasingly miserable, and suppose that the people around you, including psychologists, life philosophy teachers, and even the self-help books you have read, are also falling into the same invisible trap. The happiness trap sounds like a myth. But the truth revealed in modern psychological research is cold and ironic. The more we chase after happiness, the unhappier we become. We think we are moving towards the light, but every step pushes us deeper into the darkness. Look around, never have people had such abundant material conditions. Food, medicine, entertainment, career opportunities, education. All beyond what our ancestors could have dreamed of. Yet the cold numbers show a paradoxical reality. Depression, anxiety, addiction, loneliness and despair are spreading like never before. In any given year, nearly 1/3 of adults suffer from a mental disorder. Half of all people will at some point consider suicide, and 10% will actually attempt to end their lives. What does that mean? That is to say, happiness is not the natural state of man. We live in a culture that constantly promotes the image of smiling. Happy endings where love overcomes evil, where all difficulties are resolved in an instant. But real life is nothing like any fairy tale. Joy does not automatically reside in our hearts, and suffering is not an abnormal sign. It is the essence of the mind that has evolved over hundreds of thousands of years. Why is that? Because our brains did not evolve to make us happy. It was born to help us survive, to look for danger, to compare ourselves with others, to predict danger before it happens. The same mechanism that protected our ancestors from wild animals now keeps us up at night over unpaid bills. Because of my coworker's eyes, because of the fear of rejection, because of the obsession that I'm not good enough. The paradox here is that what we consider abnormal signs, anxiety, sadness, and low self-esteem, are just normal manifestations of a brain doing its evolutionary job. None of us are really broken for feeling miserable. We just get caught up in a game that goes against the rules, believing that happiness is a given, and if we don't have it, there must be something wrong with us. Yet despite statistics and personal experience saying otherwise, we continue to pursue this illusory model. When we are sad, we think we are weak; when we are scared, we think we are abnormal; when we are angry, we think we are failures. And the more we try to deny those feelings, the deeper we dig the hole of self-contempt. The attempt to escape from natural emotions is the source of suffering. But this is just the beginning. Because 4 false beliefs about happiness will gradually appear, step by step, revealing how people build traps for themselves. The first belief of the happiness trap is that happiness is the natural state of human beings. It sounds reasonable because all around us, from fairy tales to Hollywood movies, from romance novels to commercials, all suggest a single message. In the end, everything will be okay, love will win. The wicked are destroyed and mankind will live happily ever after. But the stark truth is far different from the cold numbers about mental illness, addiction, depression, and loneliness. It has been shown that happiness is not the norm but the exception. It appears and disappears, like a flash of sunshine in a thunderstorm rather than a permanently clear sky. If we believe that everyone else is happy and we are not, we will put ourselves in a pit of self-reproach. The bitter thing is that the illusion that everyone is fine except me creates more unhappiness when we think that suffering is our own fault. The pain multiplied. We compare ourselves to the smiles on social media, to the glamorous lives of our friends and colleagues. We forget that behind those sparkling photos are insecurities and worries. And sometimes desperate like me. Imagine a woman who has just given birth. She was exhausted, anxious, and filled with self-doubt about her ability to be a mother. But when she joined the mothers' meeting group, she was silent. Because everyone else seems happy, confident, and radiant. In reality, they were just as tired and confused as she was, but they all tried to act strong. Only when she dared to speak the truth did the veil of pretense fall, and everyone breathed a sigh of relief because everyone was experiencing the same fear. It turns out that suffering is not an abnormality but an inevitable part of the human experience. When we believe that happiness is the default, we automatically see suffering as failure. And from here, the second belief is formed. If I am not happy, it means I am flawed, I am broken, I am not normal. The trap began to close. When we believe that happiness is our natural state, the consequences are dire. If I am not happy, it means I am defective. Society and the psychotherapy system often label people as suffering, depressed, anxious, and disturbed. These labels are sometimes helpful for diagnosis. But at the same time instills in the patient a feeling of being damaged. In fact, the human brain is programmed to produce anxiety, sadness, and obsession. It's not broken, it's just doing the job it was designed for hundreds of thousands of years of evolution to do, protecting us from danger. From there, the third belief arose. To live well, you must eliminate negative emotions. This is the root of the painkiller society. Any pain we rush to find a way to cut off. Using alcohol to forget worries, eating to fill the void, burying ourselves in work to avoid feelings of meaninglessness, or seeking out courses that promise to be positive all the time. But try to remember the most valuable things in life. Love, family, career, dreams all come with pain. To love means to risk loss. Pursuing a career means accepting failure. Anxiety, fatigue, and the desire for freedom are synonymous with the fear of rejection. Any profound experience is accompanied by suffering. If our goal is to eliminate negative emotions, there is nothing left to live for. And then when those efforts fail, we cling to our last hope. We must control our thoughts and emotions. This is the ultimate illusion. A variety of self-help methods advise us to replace negative thinking with positive thinking. Repeat beautiful affirmations. Visualize a perfect self in the short term. It may help us feel better, but then the negative thinking comes back, even stronger. Because the more we try to push it away, the more we cling to it. Like trying not to think about ice cream. Immediately, the image of cool ice cream appeared in my mind. Absolute control of emotions is impossible. We cannot stop ourselves from being afraid when a gun is held to our heads, nor can we erase a painful memory with willpower alone. The reality is that we have less control than we think. Emotions come and go like ocean waves. We can't stop them from coming in. What we can control and always can. It is action. Happiness does not come from silencing the mind but from acting on values despite inner turmoil. Thus the 4 false beliefs close the trap. Happiness is the default. If I am not happy, I am broken. To live well, I must eliminate suffering and I can control my mind. Because of believing in these 4 things, we fall into a vicious circle with no way out. And now, when it was time to see how the trap worked, a woman named Michelle burst into tears. I have a wonderful husband, good children, a house, a stable job, and good health. So why am I not happy? The question was not just hers, it revealed a truth. The happiness trap is not in our circumstances but in how we deal with our inner emotions. What do we usually do? When fear, loneliness, or feelings of inferiority arise, we immediately try to push them away. We believe that if we could get rid of them, life would be easier. But that's when we enter a vicious cycle. The more we resist, the more we are swallowed, like scratching an itchy rash. The more you scratch, the more inflamed your skin becomes and the more intense the itch becomes. Look at Joseph, the man who was so afraid of rejection that he avoided it. He avoided contact, refused parties, cut off relationships, but the more isolated he became, the greater his fear of rejection became. Yvonne chose alcohol to temporarily dispel his anxiety in the crowd every time he drank. She felt relieved but then tired, ashamed, regretful. The emotions were even heavier than the initial anxiety. Daniel was depressed about his weight, ate chocolate to feel better, then hated himself for eating too much. Ahmet wanted to exercise to regain his health but the initial pain made him give up. And so the condition worsened. Andre and Shavana are stuck in marriage. The more he worked to avoid stress, the angrier she became at being left out. And every attempt to escape from conflict only makes it worse. All these stories have something in common. They both use control strategies to deal with emotions. There are 2 main forms: strategies, running away, avoiding, paralyzing oneself. For example, skipping school because of fear of failing an exam, drinking to forget, sleeping to avoid facing it, strategizing, trying to suppress, arguing, forcing yourself to be strong. For example, repeating positive affirmations to yourself, pushing your emotions away, scolding yourself to force yourself to overcome them. The problem is that these strategies are only effective temporarily and often come at a heavy cost. They take up time, energy, and sometimes even health and relationships. They block the path to what matters most, living by the values we truly hold dear. When Joseph avoids communication, he loses the chance to truly connect. When Yvonne drinks, she loses her self-respect and her body. When Michelle tried to please everyone, she only reinforced her feelings of not being good enough. The happiness trap is right there. We try to control happiness, but the more we control, the further happiness goes. We use every way to extinguish the fire in our hearts. But the more we try to put out the fire, the bigger it gets. These strategies become chains, trapping us in an unwinnable war. So the first step to escaping the trap is not to try to be stronger or more assertive, but to look the truth in the eye. Suffering is natural and the attempt to eliminate it is the source of suffering. Recognize the trap, pause, and listen to how our attempts at control have taken us away from a meaningful life. This is where the opening journey ends. We saw the trap and understood why it was so tight, and from here another door began to open instead of continuing to scratch the wound. We will learn to accept changing our relationship with emotions and step by step step out of the vicious cycle. There is a hard truth to accept. We cannot eliminate suffering, but we can change our relationship with it. Mental pain is not an enemy to be destroyed but a constant flow that can be learned to live with once we realize this. We have just begun the real journey, the journey of transforming our inner world to do it. I rely on 6 core principles. They are not commands, nor are they moral lectures. They are just tools like knives, hammers or fire that can be used at any time. The 6 principles include untangling thoughts, expanding emotions, returning to the present, awakening the observing self, identifying values, and acting decisively within this block. I will take you deeper into the principles of inner transformation, the fusion and observing self. First, let's look at diffusion. We often live in a state of cognitive fissure, completely absorbing our thoughts, considering them as absolute truth. For example, when we read a sensational newspaper story about a bank robbery, our heart beats faster and blood rushes to our face. Even though no bullets fly when imagining biting into a lemon, saliva flows even though there is no lemon on the table. Thoughts can cause the body and emotions to react as if they were reality. In that state, we forget that what is in our mind is just words and images. Instead of seeing them as harmless symbols, we act as if our lives depended on them. When the thought "I am useless" appears, we believe we are actually useless. When the story of "I will fail" arises, we shy away in fear. It was as if the future had closed its doors. When we get lost in thought, we lose our freedom of choice. So what does diffusion bring? It does not erase thoughts. It teaches us to change our perspective and create distance. And see, thinking is just thinking simply. When the sentence "I am a loser" appears, we add 4 words before it. I was thinking that the story would change immediately. It is no longer a judgment. But just a fleeting piece of self-talk, another technique, naming the story, if the mind keeps whispering "I'm not good enough." We can smile and say, "Oh, there goes the familiar me in competence." In that way, thinking loses its absolute power, like we are watching a play and no longer playing a character. Don't misunderstand. Diffusion does not make us think more positively. It only frees us from attachment when we are not led by thoughts. We are free to choose actions that are consistent with our values. Instead of getting stuck in the same loop, try imagining a picture frame hanging on the wall. In the frame was a strange, darkly colored painting. Distorted figures. You stare at it and start shaking. It was as if the drawings could reach out of the frame. But reality is just paint on canvas. Thoughts are like scary paintings, just images. Not reality. When we realize that, we can breathe, we can step back so that the painting is in its rightful place, in the frame, on the wall. Or imagine a drifting boat filled with screaming demons. You are useless, you will fail. The usual reflex is to wrestle, throw them off the boat, fight to the point of exhaustion. But no matter how hard they try, they cling. The trick is not in defeating the demons, but in keeping sailing in the direction you want. Leave them sitting there, we can still move the boat. Even when the demons are present. These metaphors reveal the core of diffusion. We don't need to eliminate unpleasant thoughts. We just need to look at it as words, as images, as fleeting sounds, like standing outside a theater. Watching characters argue on stage, we can listen but are not forced to take part. From Jeff Fusion, the journey takes us to another door. Open to emotions. Instead of suffocating or chasing them away, we observe them and give them space to exist. Try sitting still with your eyes closed. The feeling of anxiety can be a tightness in the chest, a rapid heartbeat, a flush of heat rising to the face instead of shaking the head away. Put your attention right there, observe. Breathe into that area. Imagine it having more room to loosen up, not so that it disappears but so that it has the right to exist as part of the experience. Just like opening a window to a stuffy room, the heavy air does not disappear immediately. But the new space helps us breathe easier. Expansion does not promise to eliminate suffering. It only frees us from futile fighting. The inner world does not need to be cleaned like a perfect room. It just needs to be opened wide enough to accommodate both the pleasant and the unpleasant. And when we stop fighting back, we begin to feel relief. To understand why expansion is important, let's look at what I call the grapple switch. This switch turns on every time we resist emotions. The initial anxiety may be just a small wave, but as the work progresses, we add on layers of anger as to why I am anxious. Then added a layer of shame because I was so weak. Then added a layer of despair because I would never get better than the results. A multi-layered storm, many times heavier than the original emotion. Conversely, when the switch is off, the worry remains but it is not burdened. We let it pass like a shower and it stops. Clean pain is natural pain, while dirty pain is pain we create ourselves through resistance. This distinction is key to saving energy and walking lighter. So how to practice? There are many exercises that directly surfing desire. When you crave a cigarette, a glass of wine or a social media click, think of it as a rising wave. Instead of rushing into it or trying to extinguish it, we observe its curve, rising and falling. Every desire has a cycle, and if we are patient enough, we can surf the waves without being drowned. The time machine in our heads is often pulled back into the past with regret or rushed into the future with fear. The exercise here is to notice the moment you are being pulled away by the machine and then gently bring yourself back to the present. Hands touching the breath in and out, the sounds around you. The present is the only place we can truly live. Going somewhere dirty dog. This image is about carrying wounds. Memories and emotions are ugly like a dirty dog running around the house. If we try to kick it out, it barks loudly. Scratching harder, but if we open the door and let it lie in a corner, we can gradually still live, still do important things, and the dog becomes less annoying. Unpleasant emotions do not need to be eliminated, they just need to be allowed to be present. These practices are all based on one principle. Emotions come and go as the guest chooses. The more you resist, the more they destroy, the more you expand, the sooner they leave. Expansion doesn't create instant happiness, but it frees us from the cycle of anger because of worry, worry because of anger. The beauty is that when the struggle is over, we do not become numb, but rather, we become more sensitive to life. We can feel the sadness and still listen to our loved ones, notice the trembling and still step onto the stage, see fear and courage coexist. Once we learn to detach from our thoughts and open up to our emotions, there is another ability that determines whether we can truly escape the cycle. Connect back to the present. The human mind is a time machine. It drags us back into the past, chewing over and over the mistakes. Then rush into the future. Weaving thousands of scenarios that have yet to happen, the machine never stops working, and many times we forget that we are still sitting here. Breathe life, can drink a sip of water. Connection is to turn off auto mode to return to the ongoing experience. Try to think back to the morning when you took a shower. Usually the mind is already running to work, meetings, or blaming someone. You are not actually present in the flowing water. Connection loves you doing something else. Pay attention to the cool water on your skin, the sound of the water, the smell of the soap, the shallow breathing. In that moment, you leave the time machine. Currently the only place you have access to, but connection is not enough, there is a layer deeper than OBS. What I observe here is a silent power that we rarely notice. It is not a narrative head, not a monologue that runs continuously, but a point of view that witnesses everything. Try to step back and observe. You can notice yourself thinking, you can see yourself feeling sad, you can hear yourself telling yourself you're a failure without believing it. The observing self is the part of us that is never scratched by thoughts or emotions. It just observes without judgment. Imagine you watch a movie on the screen where the characters cry, laugh, get angry, love. But you, the person sitting in the audience, remains intact. The screen may change from scene to scene, but the viewer remains constant in life. Thoughts and feelings are the movie, and observing is the silent audience within us. This is not a mystical concept. It is the simple experience of realizing that you are thinking, feeling. That's where the observer comes in. The more you practice, the less you get pulled away, the easier it is to realize that I am not the story in my head. I'm bigger than I thought I was. With Jephus and observing self, we had a foundational toolkit. They don't promise to take away pain, but they do offer freedom. Freedom from clinging to every thought, from fighting every emotion, from being dragged away by a time machine, and from identifying with old stories. It is a silent liberation that paves the way for living a life worth living. Come here, the next door awaits. Once you know how to face your inner self, the bigger question arises. Which direction will we choose, what values will we live by, and how will we act to build a meaningful life? Having learned to detach myself from the stories in my head, having practiced opening up to emotions, having practiced coming back to the present and recognizing the observing self. A big question suddenly appeared, simple but haunting. How do I really want to live? How long has it been? We run after rewards that are predetermined by society. Money, title, admiration, beautiful pictures. But even if we reach out, many times we still feel empty. It's no longer about avoiding or controlling emotions. This is the time to look straight at the direction of life. The key lies in the distinction between values and goals. Goals are specific destinations. Get a degree, buy a house, finish a project, get married, or have children. Goals can succeed or fail, once achieved they disappear. And then we need another goal to fill in. Values are the direction and compass. Never done. If the goal is to climb a mountain, the value is the endless mountain range. Guide us step by step. Take an example. A person who wishes to get married. That is the goal. But behind it may be values of love, commitment, loyalty. If only achieving goals but forgetting values, marriage easily turns into an empty shell. But if we live each day according to the values of love, sharing, and respect, life is meaningful even when specific goals are not achieved. Many people confuse values and goals. They say I want success without asking what success means deep down. Some people understand it as making a lot of money. Some people see it as good parenting. Some people are free to create. Values are the core, what we want to bring into every action, not a result to display. To discover values, need to stop and listen to yourself. You may ask, if I only had 1 year left to live, how would I want to live? Or if a child looks to me to learn how to live, what do I want him to see? These questions don't make a pretty list to stick on the wall. But awakening the true direction of value is not something to talk about but something to live. Once we understand this difference, we come closer to the big question, what do I want my life to be? This is not an abstract philosophical question but a practical guide for each choice when lost in the emotional maze. Returning to value is like finding a compass. You can imagine it like this: life is a long sea journey, the destination is islands. A place where we can stop, rest, enjoy, but the value is the wind direction, the North Star. Help the boat not to get lost. The island may be disappointed, may not be as expected, may be swept away by storms, but if there is still wind and stars, we still know we are on the right track. It is the track that makes the journey meaningful, not the individual islands. So instead of asking what do I want to achieve, the real question should be what kind of person do I want to become? How do I want to live? What do I want to bring into this world? That question never has a final answer, but it helps us wake up, helps us see that every small step is important. When starting out in their search for direction, many people stumble upon a pitfall of confusing value with other things. Sometimes we think we are living by values but in fact we are just following the orders of society or our fragile ego. For example, someone said my value is to be famous. But fame is not a value, it is a goal, and a goal that depends entirely on others. You may be celebrated today, forgotten tomorrow. If you cling to it, your life is like a boat drifting with the waves of public opinion. The real value lies deeper. It could be creativity, sharing, dedication, inspiration. Fame is just a result that may come, or may not. Or someone says my value is to get rich. Money is a means, not a destination. Maybe the values behind it are freedom, security, responsibility to family. Once you realize this, making money is no longer an endless chase but a concrete way to live in alignment with what you value. These mistakes easily turn values into empty slogans to avoid. Need to dig deeper by asking, if all the goals I am pursuing collapse, what kind of person do I still want to be? Only then does value emerge as something no one can take away. From here comes a key principle. A journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step. Values will remain just words if we do not turn them into concrete things in everyday life. If you value kindness, it shows in the way you listen to a confused coworker. If you value maturity, it will show up when you read one more page of a book even though you are tired. If you value family, it's that moment when you put down your phone and look your children in the eye. These small actions may go unseen and unappreciated, but they shape who you are. Each small step is a brick and the whole edifice of life is built from it. Many people are waiting for a great project, a turning point that changes their lives. But the truth is that the biggest turning point is consistently taking values-aligned actions day in and day out. The interesting thing is that when living like this, fulfillment is not in the result but in the process. You don't have to wait until you achieve your goals to feel meaningful in the small things you do. Meaning was there like climbing a mountain. If you only look at the top, the journey becomes miserable. But if you enjoy every step, every breath, every scenery along the way, you will be rewarded during the trip. In other words, fulfillment is not an end result but an immediate experience when you live up to your values. That's why so many people achieve all sorts of big goals and still feel empty. They reached the summit but went up the wrong mountain range. And there are also people who have not achieved any big goals but still feel deep peace. Because every day they live what they value, from mistakes to small actions, from small actions to fulfillment, a new picture gradually becomes clear that value is not something lofty. It is present in every breath, every choice. And if we want a life worth living, we must start right now. Many people mistakenly believe that in order to have a happy life, they need to eliminate as much pain as possible. But when we look closely, we see the truth is quite different. A rich life is not one of little suffering but of great depth, meaning it has many experiences, many emotions, many diverse moments. An open life will contain both joy and sorrow, both victory and defeat. And it's that blend that makes it thick. Imagine a piece of music that has only high notes and no low notes, or a painting that has only bright colors and no dark shadows. It would be flat and bland. Values are the colors that create depth, and the mood is also an integral part of the complete picture. But living by your values doesn't make fear go away. On the contrary, it often makes the fear more evident. Do you want to advance your career? The fear of failure will follow. You want to open your heart to love someone, the fear of rejection will quietly lurk. You want to start a business, the fear of financial loss will linger in your mind. Fear is not a sign of wrong direction but often a sign that we are moving towards something important. So instead of waiting for fear to go away, we need a different attitude, willingness. Willingness is the key that unlocks real action. It means I don't like this feeling, but I accept it to accompany me because what I'm aiming for is more important. Like the person who accepts the pain of chemotherapy. Not because they love pain but because they value life. Willingness is different from resignation. To give up is to surrender, to give in. Willingness is being proactive in opening the door, knowing that there will be pain but I choose to move forward because my worth is greater than that pain. The willing switch is like the opposite of the grappling switch. When turned on, emotions have a right to be present. When we turn off, we turn back to resist and fall into a deadlock with no gray area. Either we are willing or we are not. Let's see clearly. Imagine an athlete before the final match. He is trembling, his heart is pounding, his head is full of voices saying, "You will lose if you wait until you stop trembling to compete." He will never step onto the field. But if he is willing to let the fear go with him, he can tremble and still compete, and be nervous and still play his best. It is this willingness that helps him be fully present in the game. The question is not whether we are afraid, but whether we dare to live by our values in spite of fear. Because the most important things often come with the greatest fear. Look at concrete lives to see that willingness is not an abstract concept but a daily choice. Solar, a woman who has been hurt many times in love, longs for intimacy and attachment. The fear of betrayal haunted her. If she waited until the fear was gone before opening her heart, she would probably be alone all her life. Instead, she chooses to be vulnerable in dating, accepting risks as part of the journey of love. Muir, a woman who often works too hard to please her colleagues, eventually burns out. She learned to say no, but also to be willing to endure the anxiety and guilt that comes with standing firm in that feeling. She has just found her balance and self-respect again. I used to rely on alcohol to drown my sorrows. Understand that every time you drink, you are one step away from the value of health and mindfulness. She began to be willing to let the sadness stay, no longer avoiding it with alcohol. The strange thing is, when sadness has a place to stay, it becomes lighter. A successful man with a thirst for creativity gave up a high-paying job to pursue an artistic career. He knew the price, lost income, lost status, but being willing to pay the price to live up to his values made his life richer than any previous fame. These stories show a willingness not to eliminate discomfort but to allow us to act in accordance with our values and from that action. Meaning formation. Of course, no one can keep on orbit forever. There will be times when we lose our way, get caught up in old habits. Forget the values you choose, that's normal. The key is the ability to return like a compass. Even if we go astray, just look back and we can correct our course. Every fall is an opportunity to practice getting back up, not proof of failure. From start to finish, the formula is always consistent, accepting and present, choosing the value of action. No part of life is exempt from this process. In the morning while eating with my children, in the afternoon while worrying before a meeting, in the empty evening in the middle of the city, that formula still works. A meaningful life does not promise the absence of suffering. It just promises that we will know where we are going. And every step, no matter how difficult, is worth it. A life worth living is not an easy life but a life true to one's values. When I closed this book, I did not think of a secret to happiness to keep in my pocket, but of a series of paradoxes that left me speechless. The more we run from pain, the more we suffer. The more we try to control it, the more we lose it. The more we chase happiness, the more it slips away. The biggest lesson here is that happiness is not a gift that falls upon us when we do the right formula, nor is it a reward reserved for the strong. Being rich or popular is a way of life, a rich and meaningful life, not a stream of flat emotions and endless joy. The tools I share, untangling from thinking, opening to feeling, returning to the present, awakening the observing self, defining values, committing to action. Not a trick to make you feel better instantly. On the contrary, they invite you to sit down and face your pain and still choose to live, choose to love, choose to move in the direction that matters. It's paradoxical if you think about it. The way out of suffering is not to eliminate suffering but to make room for it alongside meaning. Just like a room cannot be full of light. The darkness is there to show us how precious light is. From the stories of Joseph's fear, Mule was exhausted. Donna and Lai Ju dare to risk their careers. It all points to one truth. We don't need a perfect life, we need a life that is true to our values. Honest enough to dare to tremble and still walk, dare to be sad and still love, dare to worry and still rush into important work. And then the question I want to leave you with is not do you want to be happy? Because who doesn't want that? The real question is, are you willing? Be willing to let fear go when you ask someone out. Be willing to let loneliness be present when you pursue your dreams. Be willing to let the pain quietly accompany you while you still nurture love, responsibility, and creativity. Because the only thing you can choose for sure at any given moment is how you live according to the values you hold dear. Everything else, emotions. Thoughts, circumstances can change, can betray, can make you stumble, but values cannot. I don't promise that if you do, you will always be happy and never be unhappy. I just promise that you will know where you are going and every step will matter. And in that very sense, another kind of happiness will grow quietly, unpretentious, but lasting and real. So right now, how are you ready to answer the question, what do you want your life to be? And you have the courage to live like that, despite the